Well, brothers, you child.
Shh! They're coming.
I don't appreciate being interrupted.
Look, I'm sorry, Janice. And your box. But something's out there.
Oh, is that? Oh.
Intellectual properties. I must go to my quarters. I need to make an important call.
A call? To who?
No, I will not, Mr. Blank. The Slender Man, his games, and just everything around him is one of the biggest reasons I got into horror in the first place. And he's one of my biggest inspirations. And that's exactly why I bring him up in the first place. To remind people of the impacts that he made on internet horror and why he shouldn't be forgotten. Won't you shut up?
During the early 2010s, this interdimensional being who stalks children exploded onto the internet. Created by Eric Knudsen, the Slender Man first debuted as a forum contest submission on the Something Awful forums. The goal was to create the scariest Photoshop image. After this, the Slender Man started to spread online through word of mouth, some even taking him out to be a real creature that, just by researching him, could seal your fate. He started to really get popular after the release of Slender the 8 Pages in 2012, and it released just at the right time, as that same year, YouTube changed its algorithm from views to minutes watched, causing Let's Plays to become the next big thing, especially horror games. It was as if the stars aligned to let the Slender Man take over the internet. The game itself, Slender the 8 Pages, is a simple yet effective concept. You walk around a large map trying to collect all 8 pages randomly placed throughout 10 possible landmarks. But the more pages you grab, the more aggressive he will become. If you stare at him for too long, or even just touch the Slender Man, it would be game over. This simple concept got many others to attempt to replicate or even create their own Slender games. Sometimes they would replace Slender Man with another monster, or in this case, with another character. Many Slender Fan Games would use famous cartoons or video games as a theme for the game, either featuring a character from that world becoming a Slender version of their former selves, or as the Slender Man invades their world. Today, we'll be taking a look at a few of these inspired games that do exactly this. Welcome to Cackling Pumpkins, and these are 10 Slender Fan Games. Slender Mickey. The idea of Disney horror is nothing new. Even Disney themselves have tapped into it, especially when you look at some of the concept art for Epic Mickey. It seems that even Disney knows it's a popular idea to take their IPs and turn them away from their family-friendly positive motives in favor of creepy nonsense every once in a while. I just wish they would go all out with it. They have the money to survive if things go horribly wrong somehow.
Fans do it all the time with animations, fan art, creepypastas, and so on. Cause that's what he fucking deserves.
One of which includes Slender Mickey, and it's pretty much what you'd expect. A standard Slender Fan game, but instead of the Slender Man chasing you, it's Mickey Mouse. Hot dog! I'm gonna make you regret your entire existence! But it's hard to talk about this game as it's so standard to Slender's formula, a foresty location where you collect notes, and the only Disney element on the map is the house from Mickey Mouse's clubhouse. But besides that, the game's not that interesting. Even when you look at Mickey, he just stands there as the stock scream is played. At least the model of Mickey seems to be completely original, but the textures could have used some work, and he's just stuck in a T-pose. The idea of a Slender-based game inspired by Disney could work if it had more fun ideas put into it, like maybe instead of a forest you're walking through an abandoned Disneyland, as Mickey uses rubber hose logic to make great distances and chase you. Just the idea of a rubber hose monster using old cartoon logic against you sounds so amazing. Spongebob Slendypants. SpongeBob SquarePants, Nickelodeon's golden child. Created by Steven Hillenburg in 1999, SpongeBob SquarePants in its early years managed to gain an audience of not only kids, but also adults, a lot of which were college students. This is mainly because of its, at the time, unique sense of humor that never looked down on its audience. Steven Hillenburg himself taught marine biology during the 80s, so he would often apply this knowledge to the writing of the show.
As a kid, I was obsessed with SpongeBob. I saw the movie in theaters, played most of the games, and every time it was on TV, I would take the time to watch it. Well, because I don't have TV, and I'm not going to pay for another streaming service just to watch one show. Look, SpongeBob is great, just not, I'll blow $15 a month great. We all complained about TV, and look where that got us.
Much like Mickey Mouse, SpongeBob horror is nothing new. One of the most well-known creepypastas is based on the show, being Squidward's Suicide, or Red Mist, which was acknowledged in the show at one point, but was immediately censored as soon as it was released, and was replaced with a baby Squidward instead. And this is why we can't have nice things. Anyway, in SpongeBob Slendypants, you play as Patrick as you collect 8 pages while avoiding Slendypants, who's just his Battle for Bikini Bottom model recolored, and also stuck in a T-pose. At least Slender Mickey made an original model. This game has a ton of references to the show, and has a better map that for some reason takes place on land despite the setting of the show taking place under the sea. But at least it has more going for it in that regard. But thanks to the modern age of the internet, we can make this game even more entertaining than it was before.
Listen here, you son of a bitch. If you don't stop collecting my pages, I'm going to use my hot spatula that's been sitting on the stove for hours to cauterize your throat shut. Then I'll send you to the salty Splatoon where you'll run around trying to ask for help, but all you can do is point down your throat. So they'll think you're asking the people to put their dick in your mouth. After they're done kicking your fucking ribs, and I'll send the remains to Plankton where he'll turn your body to chum.
Gumball's Fright.
We've already talked about the last 2 games before, so if you're familiar with this channel, you probably already know about them. Not really. I'm sure they exist, it's just kind of hard to come by these days, especially in recent years since Slender Man isn't that relevant and everyone wants to make Five Nights at Freddy's or PT-inspired games. I'm sure they exist, and I'm open to suggestions, they're just hard to come by. But don't worry, the rest of the games on this list are completely new. You're not gotta worry about that.
The Amazing World of Gumball was one of Cartoon Network's big hitters around the 2010s, premiering in 2011 and ending in 2019. The Amazing World of Gumball is about a boy named Gumball and his family, the Watersons, on their day-to-day life. But their hometown of Elmore is filled with characters of all shapes and sizes, shapeshifters, realistic dinosaurs, ghosts, angry puppet neighbors, and even a human mouth flipped upside down. It's often praised for its visual style and multimedia aspects, which Gumball's Fright takes some advantage of. Well, it's possible at least, but I can't be sure. You do run through a 3D model of Elmore Junior High, with 2D characters chasing the player, but these 2D characters are simply still images of some of the characters from the show, edited to have black eyes. The goal is to collect 10 pages throughout the school, and the only thing you have is a flashlight. The static of the game is also a still image that waves back and forth as it covers the screen. The rate at which it covers the screen is far too fast and can lead to some cheap deaths, as it gets to the point where you can't even see where you're going. Slender Space.
Isaac, get the hell out of there!
The door's unlocked! Run!
Now here's an oddly appropriate crossover for this list: Slender and Dead Space. For those who don't know, Dead Space is a third-person horror game that takes place in an abandoned space station called the Ishimura, which became infested with zombie-like parasites called necromorphs. Back in 2008, it was praised for bringing fresh life to the survival horror genre, along with similar titles such as BioShock. Back in 2013, a fan-made crossover called Slender Space was released. The player wakes up, only to see a burning ship crash into another parallel to your own, as both soon collide with yours. This results in the power shutting down, and the only way to escape is to collect 6 power nodes and find the exit. The set pieces take clear inspiration from the Ishimura, and the developer did a great job at recreating the style. Granted in a more limited version, but it still accomplishes its goal.
Kind of ironic that there's a fan-made crossover between Dead Space and Slender when both of them are considered dead these days. Yeah. Let's move on.
Swamp Sim. Yes, I know, Shrek has become a meme in the last couple years, especially after the Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life craze back in 2013, and it's only gotten worse from there. At least the films still survive on their own and aren't affected by the memes. The last theatrical Shrek film was Shrek Forever After, as released back in 2010, so it was able to predate all of it. One thing that came from the memes was Swamp Sim. It even directly references the Shrek is Love meme right at the beginning of the game. So it's obvious from the start that this title was made as a joke at the expense of DreamWorks' famous ogre. The game's objective is to collect 8 onions in this lonely swamp, while avoiding Shrek as he chases you down. As you collect more onions, you hear deepened audio clips from the franchise.
No! Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
The map itself actually has quite a bit going on in it, from Shrek's punishment barrel and Donkey's dead body laying in a burning building. Despite clearly being made as a joke, the map has more presentation and distinct landmarks that help it stick out from other titles on this list. It's weird how far some people will go for a simple gag, but I fully appreciate it. Unlike some other games where they're either just 2D images or models and T-poses, Shrek is actually fully animated, and when Shrek is in close range, you'll begin to hear a distorted version of Smosh Mouth's All-Star as he stomps closer and closer. Be sure to keep an eye on your surroundings, as falling in the water is instant death, as you'll have to start all over again.
Hey now, you're a rock star.
Slendertale. Being released in 2015 by indie developer Toby Fox, Undertale quickly became one of the biggest hits of the indie scene, with its colorful cast of characters, earthbound inspirations, comical writing, feel-good story with a dark undertone, and the choice of either befriending all of your enemies or killing them. There have been tons of fan-made stories, animation, artwork, and even fan games based on Undertale. I could probably make an entire video going over some of it.
In fact, while scripting this video, I've gotten a ton of ideas for future content.
Hot dog, we're almost in. I am going to peel him like an onion.
Yeah, you're right. I'll probably work on those videos tonight if we don't die. How about that?
One such game is Slendertale. Unlike all the other games on this list, Slendertale is not a first-person 3D horror game, but a 2D top-down game, meant to be based on the overworld gameplay of Undertale. You play as Frisk, who wakes up in the middle of the night after hearing some noises. Soon, you're forced into a terrifying game of survival where you collect notes. The game focuses on the character W.D. Gaster, and while he technically doesn't appear in Undertale, his existence is hinted through text, other characters in the game like the Gaster followers, and some unused content in the game's files. All that's really known about him is that he was once the royal scientist that worked for Asgore before Alphys took his place. Much like Sans and Papyrus, his text is under a completely different font. Many of the fans have speculated on the identity of Gaster. Despite not making any appearance in Undertale, the fans have already made tons of fan-made content inspired by him, simply due to his mysterious origins. Slendertale is much longer than most of the games on this list, and even has cutscenes, dialogue, and multiple locations to visit. Quite possibly, it's the most unique game out of this list, as it reminds me of the days of RPG Maker horror games. PokeSlender. The world of Pokemon is so charming and beautiful, isn't it? This one's a dead guy. This one carries children in the air and drops them. This one is another dead guy. This one manipulates children and takes them away. And this one mind controls people and eats their vitality, then buries their remains under itself. Nature is lovely, isn't it? That's quite possibly my favorite thing about the world of Pokemon. Even if it's rarely shown visually, they aren't afraid to give these pocket monsters some disturbing features every now and then. I may not like the current direction or quality of the games as of late, but I can still appreciate what the world has to offer. PokeSlender is a fan game that's about a trainer who lost his Pokemon and goes out to find them. They must collect the Pokeballs that contain his lost companions. The main threat of this game is Darkrai. For those who don't know, Darkrai is a 4th generation mythical Pokemon that induces sleep and horrifying nightmares upon its prey. There's also another threat, and possible reference to Lavender Town. One of the Pokeballs is hidden by a gravestone, and once retrieved it will awaken the unresting spirit of a Poliwag who chases after the player. The game suffers from some collision errors, and the static and sound that comes from seeing Darkrai can activate even if Darkrai is not on screen, but is in the direction of the player's vision, which is something that doesn't happen in most Slender games. The static and sound and loud noises only come when the monster is on screen, not by simply facing their general direction. It's a bit sloppy, but still worth looking into if you have the free time. Ronald. I'm surprised you don't see more McDonald's-based horror on the internet. Don't get me wrong, it's clearly there, but not as much as something like Pokemon or Undertale horror. It may sound silly, but think about it. One of the biggest fast food chains in the world, many kids have nostalgic memories of the location, especially its play place. How Ronald McDonald is a clown, which in recent years, clowns have become more associated with horror than anything else. Also, it's got ads like this.
Ah, here they are. Triple thick McDonald shakes. Why, they're empty. Say, you sure can get a lot in these bags, can't you?
Yeah, so I gotta wonder why there isn't more. Well, there is the game Ronald, which I'm not certain if it's directly based on Slender or just meant to be a creepy fan game, but I'll still count it for its similarities. There is no story, as the game starts immediately, much like the first Slender. You walk through not only a knockoff McDonald's called McDougal's, but also a large parking lot and a grocery store. You sneak through this large map collecting 8 Happy Meals, while doing your best to avoid Ronald. Getting too close or staring at him for too long will cause him to immediately spring to life and speed towards you, ending the game. There is a lot of detail in this map, especially in the grocery store, but I think the inside of the McDougal's could have used a bit more detail. There are also items you can pick up, but I'm going to be completely honest, I have no idea what they're used for. Besides that, it's a pretty solid fan game. SlenderCraft. Minecraft and Slender Man have a lot in common. Both started in 2009, started to get popular in the early 2010s, got a boost from Let's Players, and have had horror stories and fan game content inspired by them. Everyone already knows this already, but the mob, Enderman, is actually a direct parody of the Slender Man, and now the Enderman is a playable skin in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
This right here. This skin is the closest thing that we will ever get to Slender Man being playable in Smash. And you know what? I'll take it.
Slender Man wins!
But this isn't the only time the two have had something in common. This brings us to SlenderCraft, a fan game where Steve goes into another portal, only to end up in a world where the Slender Man is after him. The game attempts to recreate the blocky style of Minecraft, and even makes new assets inspired by the game. Even the Slender Man himself is stylized to look like a Minecraft mob. The reason this game is so high on the list is because of the attention to detail. You don't catch Pokemon or use repels in PokeSlender. You don't have to go into any battles in Slendertale, but you do collect material and craft objects to help you escape the Slender Man in SlenderCraft. Even objects that aren't in the game, like a flashlight. I often wonder why it's taken so long for electronics to be added to Minecraft. Maybe they fear that such a big addition will disrupt the game into something that it's not, and ruin the experience. Who knows, honestly. Just like Slender, you collect 8 nodes, and once you get them all, you return to the original portal and escape. This game would have been number 1 on the list, but there's just one thing the next game has that this doesn't.
Alright. Just one more left.
Winky winky, dipsy, whoa, Slendytubbies.
Slendertubbies. Now you all may be very confused. Out of all games to put on the number 1 spot, why specifically Slendytubbies? I mainly put this game in for one reason. It's not just a single game, it's an entire series of games. During the craze of Slender Fan Games, countless titles were released, one being Slendytubbies. It's a very standard Slender Fan game. You play as a nameless Teletubby trying to collect all of the Tubby custard in the map, as a purple, human-faced, screaming Teletubby chases you. Its quality is lower than the higher games on this list, as the scream you hear when a Slendytubby is near is just a generic stock scream. This game would have been much lower on the list if it was just a standalone title. But there's more. The sequel, released in May of 2014, adds more visual improvements, a remake of the original, multiple new maps, new monsters, new objectives, both single and multiplayer, Easter eggs, and a camera with night vision instead of a flashlight. Truly, it's a huge improvement from the original game, and even if this was the only Slendytubbies game on the list, it would still be number 1 with the amount of content and variety. Then there's Slendytubbies 2D, a top-down sprite-based remake of the games. Lastly, there's Slendytubbies 3 in 2017. It's primarily single-player based, as it has a multiple chapter campaign and a new story disconnected from the first 2 games. The game looks far better than the previous titles. Obviously, the developer, ZeoWorks, had a lot of fun with the series. This doesn't even include the remakes of the previous titles and DLC. Slendytubbies has a lot going for it, and I encourage others to give the series a shot if they're willing to.
Well, that's it. Now we wait. Hey cousin, thanks for the help. Well, time to get back to work. These videos ain't gonna make themselves.